What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. So today I want to talk about Diablo 4. Is it wasting your time? Now, this is going to be more of a constructive criticism video versus just all negativity because I do want to offer some solutions, but I think it's one of the biggest problems right now in Diablo 4 with its retention rate as well as just the players complaining. And I don't think they're complaining from a side of they just absolutely hate this game and it cannot be fixed. I think that there are issues with this game that are major, and I want to start this off by a tweet by Grums over here. If you guys don't know who this person is, he is the producer of Diablo 2 and StarCraft 2, one of the best games of like all time here. So he tweeted out and said that you cannot defend this. It makes no sense to slow down the teleports out of dungeons in Diablo 4. It was done to milk seconds of playtime. They had a target time goal they had to meet through nerfs and timers, analytics and live service game metrics to max profits ruins gameplay, and I cannot agree more with this. There are certain times where someone is in charge of the game, and I don't want to go ahead and use some of the people that talked during the live campfire that these were their ideas. Sometimes it's someone higher up and they have to tell someone, well, this is what you got to do in the game, and you have to go out there publicly and say, you know, we're not actually trying to slow down the game. You cannot argue that the change with the, even though it's just a few seconds of your channeling to get outside of the dungeons, right? All these seconds, they start to add up. And if we look at the towns and a lot of stuff that I want to talk about in this video, a lot of these things are literally just time wasters. And why is it wasting your time? Well, because you're not actually playing the game. You're doing tedious things by just walking around, the nerfs to the cooldown on the horse. Why do these things even exist in the game? And well, Grums probably has a good idea, and it is simply done to get more playtime. And it's not even that you're playing. You're literally walking from point A to point B, and that wouldn't really be considered fun. Now, this goes even deeper into video games, and in some video games, they have these things that will break up combat. One game that does this very well is God of War. They have this excellent scenery, but this is a game more so about min-maxing, especially when we're looking at the end game versus the campaign and seeing these cool sights. Now, in the game, they do give you an option while you're doing the campaign to see these cool sights, and that would break up the combat, so you're not, you know, constantly sore with your, hands constantly pushing all the buttons. So sometimes it is a game design decision for a more artistic style, but when we're looking about the end game, I want to say that that's a little bit more difficult to argue. So I find it really interesting. This was something that was clipped, and a lot of people have been talking about this clip in general, and it comes down to talking about changing the speed, and they're saying that they're not trying to slow down the game. So I'm just gonna go ahead and play.
We are not trying to slow down the game.
No, and to that point, like we have a vision for how long we want the game to take for players. We realized that it's taking a little bit longer than that, than what our vision was originally.
Okay, so if they already acknowledge that, because they have the statistics, right? They're able to go in the back end and find out, you know, how long is it taking for players to reach point A to point B or do whatever sort of goal, right? Now, the interesting thing with this is, if the vision is taking, like, it's longer than they had in terms of their vision, then why would you increase the amount of time? Again, this is probably done for retention rate. Going further into this, and I think it comes down to how far apart everything is in the town. It's a time waster. Now, you could argue that it could be artistically done to make the town and this whole world feel alive, right? Because if every vendor is right next to each other, it just feels like it's kind of cramped, where while you're doing the campaign, I think it's nice to have them spread apart. So you see like the different zones, you see that the town is very big. It gives a sense of scale to the world. But when you're in the end game, you do not care about this kind of stuff. You want your game to be as efficient as possible, and I'll talk about more about other action RPGs. And this goes to just games in general, especially in modern games. They don't respect the limited time amount of, time that people have playing the game, whether it's doing certain things to require all these things. And then what's weird is like there's all these timers. It almost feels like a waiting simulator, right? Where you have to reach this timer, you have to go here. This only happens on Tuesday at 5 p.m. and you got to wait here. I don't really like that system, and I think that this could be done a lot better. This is another tweet over here by Grums, and he's quoting from the campfire saying, "We know it's not fun. People are blasting through the content, and this is the curse of live service games. They deliberately make bad design decisions." I'm talking about the cooldown reduction too. Why was a cooldown nerf? It's not fun to finally build up your character and then be like, well, I have to wait for this cooldown, right? That's a obstacle in the very beginning that you should be able to overcome through gear. And originally, especially with the barbarian, it was much easier to get that cooldown reduction so you can kind of play at a much faster rate. You can keep up your shout so you can become unstoppable. But they're deliberately nerfing the game in a sense where he's saying bad design decisions. This is something that even a PC gamer was talking about. Again, it really does feel painful, and I don't know why that they're making these decisions other than the fact that they want to keep players long in the game. You want to know how I think you can actually keep people interested in playing your game? To make the game fun, make them want to play alts, and this is something I want to talk about briefly. And I was just checking out, literally sorting by the top today. It's just all disappointing things. I just kind of stopped playing. We kind of stopped playing. He's talking about him and his wife stopped playing, and then there's the whole like talk about the battle pass, the mathematically thing where basically it ends up that like you get 998 coins, then you have to spend more when the next sort of seasons roll over. The horse cooldowns, reasons why you should hire my sorceress as a skeletal mage minion because they're saying it's so bad. The seasonal workbench should be in every town. A lot of these things are just so far apart. It's literally waiting for you to do things. And they're talking about burnout. I don't want to do this again. It's just mainly complaints, okay? Like, I'm not just cherry picking here and just going over like some of the stuff that people are talking about in terms of negativity. The horse cooldown. Why are all these cooldowns? Again, is it wasting our time intentionally to get more hours? Again, from Grums, I mean, he probably understands more about, marketing, these sort of like intricate numbers that, us players don't have access to. This talking about the workbench. Why are these so far apart? And it's just the same kind of things that I've been talking about. This is talking about the coins where it's just making it a little bit more difficult. Now, as far as the battle pass, this is a monetization decision. And at the end of the day, do I really care about too much about the skins? Not really. I don't really think it's that big of a deal. I think it would be really good to be able to buy the next battle pass and continuously progress. That's going to actually increase your player retention rate, although you may make less money in the short term, but in the long term, sometimes people don't complete the entire thing. Getting your players retention rate is still good because you also sell skins in the shop, not just the battle pass. And I think that respecting the player's time is one of the best things that Fortnite actually does. Let's talk about stashes being so far away. And I was going back and just thinking about it in general, where Path of Exile, you're able to completely customize your hideout. Look at how close all the NPCs are. I can customize my entire hideout and just slam things to be much faster. I'm playing the game, if that makes any sense, versus wasting my time running over here. I gotta go to the occultist. Oh wait, hold on, I want to equip a different skin because I just got unlocked on my battle pass. These things are so far apart. And I was even going back into, I literally just took the screenshot in Diablo 3, and I was like, look at this. Almost everything is on that one screen, right? If I need to go ahead and salvage things, it's right there. If I want to spend my blood shards at Kadala, it's right there. If I want to go ahead and modify something in the cube, it's right there. Everything, the stash, everything is right there, and it's so crazy, right? And I'm just looking at the mini map, and then I go to D4, and then I'm like, okay, well, the stash is over here, and then if I want to go somewhere else, look at how far away it is on this little map over here. Going into where I'm at right now, if I want to go salvage, I gotta go over here. If I want to go change something at the occultist, that's way over here. If I want to go spend my obols, same thing kind of like with blood shards, it's way over here. If I want to go upgrade my jewelry, it's over. These things are too far spread apart in the end game. In the very beginning, again, I mentioned that it makes the world feel alive, and I think that's okay during the campaign. And especially on the nerfs on cooldowns, you're basically standing still, waiting for something to happen. And like I mentioned before, sometimes, I'm not saying we need to be able to spam our ultimate skill every 1 second, right? I'm saying that in terms of overcoming a build's obstacle, like for example on Sorceress, you need to apply the vulnerability with your Ice Nova, your Frost Nova. You need to be able to do certain things in order to do damage. But the thing is that you want to be able to overcome this towards the end of the game, so you feel powerful. Because the game, the way it works is the world kind of scales with you. It's kind of hard to kind of feel that big sense of power, and you're able to do that very easy in Diablo 3. And well, there are people out there that can do it, and congrats to this guy being able to, solo a tier 100 as level 91. This is like the 1%. A lot of people aren't able to do certain things, and on top of that, the core mechanic of this season, right? Because I was thinking about like this season, and I was kind of complaining about it, and people were asking my thoughts on it, and we just dropped my like video review. What is this? The season mechanic is to fight the same monster twice. So you kill the monster, and then you click on the thing. You gotta sit there, and it's waiting simulator. And I think this is a big problem that this game needs to address, because if you're not having fun in a video game, that defeats the whole purpose of a video game, right? And so we kill this monster, then we click on the thing, and then we just kill the monster 2 times. That's essentially what we have in terms of the season mechanic, and then it drops the item. Why can't we just kill it and it just drops the item? I just think that sitting around, clicking on the thing, waiting for it to spawn in, it's just a lot slower. And I was even going back to some of my older games and kind of trying to think, did these other games really respect our time? And I would say for the most part, Last Epoch pretty much respects your time. Even Wolcen, all right? Wolcen still respected your time for the most part in terms of waiting around for certain things and mechanics to happen, right? I was even going back to my old Twitch actually on, this was actually yesterday, and I was looking at like the time that it took while I was waiting for the boss. Again, waiting simulator is the key problem here. It's wasting time, right? I have to get to the boss, and usually people will sit there and they'll wait for like a minute or two. Maybe there's the campfire, but you're sitting there. It's waiting simulator. You're wasting time.
Well, thanks for wasting my time tonight.
The boss takes a minute to spawn. Usually people like kind of wait. You know, there's a timer and it shows you, but you got to go to different websites to view what the timers are. It's just not built in the game. And then I'm like, you know, going on to my YouTube shorts, and this is the boss. It's dead in 11 seconds. So I wait 1 minute to kill the boss, and then like on top of that, world bosses definitely need like some sort of a update on this. I think that they could be buffed. And then on top of that, you have to go to like Hell Tides. You have to find out when's the boss spawn and when's a lot of these things. You're kind of wasting time in the sense where you got to go to another website. It's not built into the game, and I think that everything should be a lot more integrated and a lot smoother in the game in general. And on top of that, the glyph leveling is way too slow. I think we need a loot filter. It's 2023 at this point. Almost every action RPG has some sort of a loot filter in the game. Heck, Torchlight Infinite does this so much better, and that is a mobile game. I know Diablo Immortal doesn't even have a loot filter either, but like you can get items a lot easier because it's basically you just get the item and then you just slam the power onto it. Like you can grab another legendary and just throw it on. So it makes things a lot smoother in terms of progression, in terms of endgame, versus looking at every single item. We need a loot filter, and it needs to be something where they're like, okay guys, we're working on the loot filter. When there's something to announce, we'll get it for you guys. And same thing with the stash space. I know we're getting one. It's a limitation of the game apparently, which I think they really should have communicated better, but they need to really say, hey guys, we want to give you 10 stash tabs. We are working on it, not just, well, we're going to give you an additional one and that's it. I think they really need to kind of, you know, talk more about that. But in terms of like leveling the glyphs, and this is a really big problem just in general with the glyphs, it's not alt friendly at all because you have to do the whole setup of getting all of your glyphs on every single character. In Diablo 3, it's just so much more streamlined where we can just go, all right, so I have like, let's say like, you know, if you play Diablo 3, the meta is basically Bane of the Trapped in like every single build. It's just much faster to upgrade these glyphs, and glyphs and gems are very, very similar. And I think that we should be able to use the same glyphs. And on top of that, in terms of just waiting around for things to happen in the game, I was like just thinking about like D2, and like if you want to do, you know, Ubers, you could just go farm keys and do it. You don't have to wait for a very specific time for the world boss. And the world boss is, in a lot of people's mind, it is like the end final content. Like, what's the biggest content if you were to ask someone in Diablo 4? I mean, technically there's Uber Lilith, but you can only do that, you know, once. There is like the malignant boss, but again, most of these things are like done once. So like, what is like the end game Uber variant? It's kind of like the boss, but I feel like the world boss isn't even really that challenging. Even going back to like D3, you can consistently do the Ubers. Now, the Hellfire items are just kind of gotten phased out, but for the most part, the core point of this video was really just highlighting the amount of time that you're wasting and the things that were like, you have to wait for certain things to happen in this game, whether it's cooldown, whether it's the horse, whether it's a lot of these things where it just feels like you're wasting time walking from point A to point B. And again, I didn't want this video to be just negativity. I think that we could actually fix this and basically streamline the game a little bit more towards the end game. The earlier game, I think you can keep the campaign the way it's oriented in terms of having all the NPCs kind of farther away, and you kind of have a town to explore versus everything right, you know, next to you. But I think towards the end, again, this could be definitely something to really make the player actually enjoy the game versus sitting there and channeling, you know, to exit the dungeon. Why are these things increased, even though they mentioned that the game is taking a lot longer than they want it to? So what is the reason by increasing it? Again, these are things where I think that they can be fixed relatively easy. It's just a numerical change to buff the cooldown, you know, towards the end game. Maybe in the next sort of, you know, section, maybe we get a new world here. Maybe instead of ancestral, we get primal items, and these new primal items can roll to have more cooldown reduction, and, you know, it'll go beyond what we had before they nerfed cooldown reduction. So that's my whole point of the video. I'm curious to know your guys' thoughts down below, and again, I want to be constructive with this, and I don't mean to be super negative, but at the end of the day, that is the reality of this game right now, and I hope through time this game can get much better. But that's my thoughts. Let me know yours down below. If you guys enjoyed this video, drop a like on it. If you're new here, hit subscribe, turn the bell, and I'll update you guys if we get some sort of buff, as we are supposed to get some newer change in the next upcoming like week or two, and I'll update you guys what's going on with this new set of buffs. Anyways, take care. I'll see you in the next video. Check the pinned comment for more Diablo content.